In J.R.R. Tolkien's epic The Lord of the Rings, Aragorn's journey from a ranger in the north to the King of Gondor is marked by significant choices that shape the fate of Middle-earth. One of the most crucial decisions he makes is to summon the army of the dead to aid in the War of the Ring. However, despite their overwhelming power, Aragorn chooses not to take this spectral force to the final battle at Mordor. In this video, we'll explore the reasons behind this decision and how it reflects Aragorn's character, his understanding of honor, and the deeper themes of Tolkien's work. The army of the dead, also known as the Dead Men of Dunharrow, is one of the most haunting and memorable elements in The Lord of the Rings. Their origins trace back to the Second Age, when Isildur, the king who cut the One Ring from Sauron's hand, called upon the men of the White Mountains to fulfill their oath to aid him in his war against the Dark Lord. However, these men, fearing Sauron's wrath, betrayed their vow and refused to fight. As a result, Isildur cursed them, condemning them to an existence as restless spirits until they could fulfill their oath. For centuries, these cursed souls haunted the paths of the dead, a shadowy and foreboding place that lay between Rohan and Gondor. The terror they inspired kept even the bravest of men away from their domain, and they became the stuff of legends and nightmares. They were seen as harbingers of doom, and their power was feared by all who knew of them. However, their true purpose was not to spread terror, but to await the heir of Isildur, the one who could release them from their eternal curse by leading them into battle to fulfill their ancient vow. Aragorn, as the direct descendant of Isildur, is the only one who can summon and command the army of the dead. His decision to do so is not made lightly. As the threat of Sauron grows and the forces of Gondor are stretched thin, Aragorn recognizes that conventional military strategies may not be enough to turn the tide of war. With time running out and the fate of Middle-earth hanging in the balance, he resolves to take the perilous journey through the paths of the dead, a path from which no living man had ever returned, to summon the dead, to fight for the living. The appearance of the army of the dead at the Battle of Pelennor Fields is nothing short of cataclysmic. These spectral warriors, who cannot be harmed by mortal weapons, sweep through Sauron's forces like a storm, turning what seemed like certain defeat into a decisive victory for the forces of Gondor. The terror they inspire is matched only by their relentless and unstoppable nature. They do not tire, they do not falter, and they do not fail. Yet, despite their overwhelming power, their role in the war is not to be the ultimate weapon, but to fulfill a very specific purpose. One that Aragorn, with his deep sense of honor and understanding of oaths, respects above all else. Aragorn's decision to release the army of the dead after the Battle of Pelennor Fields is a testament to his character and his unwavering commitment to the principles of honor and justice. Throughout The Lord of the Rings, Aragorn is portrayed as a leader who embodies the highest ideals of nobility. He is not only a skilled warrior, but also a man of deep integrity who places great importance on the value of oaths and promises. This aspect of his character is central to his decision-making and is particularly evident in his dealings with the army of the dead. The oath that the dead had sworn to Isildur was a binding and sacred one. It was a vow that carried with it the weight of their honor, and its violation had resulted in their curse. Aragorn, understanding the gravity of oaths, knows that the army of the dead's obligation is not to him personally, but to the greater cause of Gondor in its time of need. By summoning them, Aragorn is not seeking to exploit their power for his own ends, but to give them the chance to fulfill their ancient promise and find peace. Once the dead have fulfilled their oath by helping to secure victory at Pelennor Fields, Aragorn recognizes that their debt is paid. To compel them to continue fighting, to drag them to Mordor as a mere tool of war, would be to dishonor the very principles he stands for. It would be an abuse of the power he holds over them, reducing them to nothing more than slaves bound by fear, rather than warriors reclaiming their lost honor. Aragorn's release of the dead is a profound act of respect for their dignity and a reaffirmation of his own commitment to justice. It is a decision that sets him apart as a leader who understands that true power lies not in domination, but in mercy and respect for others. The army of the dead also serves as a powerful symbol in Tolkien's work, representing the themes of life and death, hope and despair. Their very existence is a reminder of the consequences of broken oaths and the heavy toll that such betrayals can exact, even beyond death. When Aragorn chooses not to bring the dead to Mordor, he is making a statement about the nature of the struggle against Sauron. This is not just a battle of armies and swords, but a moral and spiritual contest between life and death, hope and despair. By choosing to leave the dead behind, Aragorn is emphasizing the importance of the living in the battle for Middle-earth's future. The ultimate victory over Sauron must be achieved by the courage, strength, and sacrifice of the living. It is the living, with their hopes, dreams, and frailties, who must face the darkness and overcome it. To rely on the dead to achieve this victory would be to place hope in something that is inherently bound to despair and the past. The dead have no future. Their time is over. The living must carry the burden of the future, and it is their courage and resilience that will determine the outcome of the war. Furthermore, Aragorn's decision reflects a deep understanding of the corrupting influence of power. The army of the dead, with their invincibility, could easily become a crutch, a means of achieving victory without the cost and sacrifice that true heroism requires. But Aragorn knows that the ends do not justify the means. The fight against Sauron is not just about winning at any cost. It is about preserving the very values and principles that make life worth living. By refusing to use the dead as an unstoppable force, Aragorn is rejecting the idea that might makes right, and instead affirms that true power lies in wisdom, compassion, and honor. This decision also reinforces the theme that life, despite its inherent fragility, holds the greatest potential for change and growth. The dead are static, bound by their past, unable to change or grow. The living, on the other hand, are dynamic, capable of growth, capable of making choices that can alter the course of history. Aragorn's choice to leave the dead behind is a choice to embrace life, with all its uncertainties and risks, as the true force that can bring about a better future. In conclusion, Aragorn's decision not to take the army of the dead to Mordor is a multifaceted one, deeply rooted in his sense of honor, his understanding of the symbolic meaning of life and death, and his commitment to the principles of justice and respect. It is a decision that reflects his wisdom as a leader and his deep understanding of the moral and spiritual dimensions of the struggle against Sauron. By releasing the dead, Aragorn not only honors their oath, but also affirms the power of the living to shape their own destiny. It is a choice that underscores the themes of hope, courage, and the value of life that are central to Tolkien's work, and that ultimately defines Aragorn as a true king worthy of leading Middle-earth into a new era of peace and prosperity. Aragorn's journey throughout The Lord of the Rings is not just a personal quest for redemption and kingship, but also a broader mission to unite the disparate peoples of Middle-earth against the overwhelming threat of Sauron. His rise to leadership is marked by his ability to bring together elves, dwarves, men, and even other beings like the Ents, all of whom have their own histories, cultures, and, at times, conflicts. His leadership is characterized by a deep understanding of the importance of unity, cooperation, and the strength that comes from a shared purpose. It is within this context that Aragorn's decision not to take the army of the dead to Mordor can be fully understood. The army of the dead, while immensely powerful, is not a conventional force. They are bound to Aragorn alone through the ancient curse laid upon them by Isildur. Their loyalty is not to any nation or cause, but to the fulfillment of their oath. Their presence on the battlefield, while effective in turning the tide at Pelennor Fields, is not one that fosters the kind of unity Aragorn knows is essential for the ultimate victory against Sauron. Instead, their spectral and fearsome nature could easily undermine the fragile alliances that have been formed between the various free peoples of Middle-earth. The armies of Gondor and Rohan, though weakened by war, are composed of living, breathing men who fight not out of compulsion or curse, but out of loyalty to their homes, their leaders, and their desire to see a free Middle-earth. These men, though outnumbered and facing almost insurmountable odds, have placed their trust in Aragorn and the other leaders of the free peoples. Introducing the army of the dead into this already precarious alliance could have had devastating effects on the morale and unity of the living forces. The sight of an undead army, with its terrifying and unnatural presence, might have sown fear and mistrust among the ranks of the living, weakening their resolve at a critical moment. Moreover, Aragorn's leadership is about more than just winning battles. It is about forging a future for Middle-earth that is based on mutual respect, cooperation, and understanding among its diverse peoples. The War of the Ring is not just a struggle for survival, but also a test of whether the free peoples can come together to create a world that is free from the shadow of Sauron. To achieve this, Aragorn knows that the living must stand together, shoulder to shoulder, in the face of the enemy. They must rely on each other, build trust, and fight for a shared future. The army of the dead, by their very nature, do not fit into this vision of unity. They are bound by a different set of rules, driven by a different purpose, and their continued presence could have created a rift between Aragorn and the very people he seeks to lead. Another critical aspect of Aragorn's decision is the message it sends about the nature of power and leadership. Throughout his journey, Aragorn demonstrates a profound understanding that true leadership is not about imposing one's will through fear or coercion, but about inspiring and empowering others to act out of their own free will. By choosing not to take the army of the dead to Mordor, Aragorn is making a statement about the kind of leader he is and the kind of world he hopes to build. He does not wish to rule through the terror of an unstoppable undead force, but through the loyalty and respect of the living. His leadership is based on trust, mutual respect, and the recognition that every person, be they a humble soldier or a mighty king, has a role to play in the fight against darkness. Aragorn's choice also highlights the importance of sacrifice and shared responsibility in the struggle against Sauron. The journey to Mordor and the final battle at the Black Gate are not just about defeating the enemy. They are about the willingness of the free peoples to stand together and face their greatest fears. Each soldier who marches to the Black Gate is making a profound sacrifice, risking everything for the hope of a better future. By leaving the army of the dead behind, Aragorn ensures that this sacrifice is not diminished. The living must face the ultimate challenge themselves, without the crutch of an invincible, supernatural force. This decision honors the courage and resolve of those who have chosen to fight, and it underscores the idea that the victory over Sauron must be earned by the living through their own strength, courage, and unity. Furthermore, Aragorn's decision is a reflection of his deep respect for the traditions and cultures of the various peoples he seeks to unite. The free peoples of Middle-earth have long histories, rich with their own customs, values, and beliefs. Aragorn, as a leader, is acutely aware of the importance of respecting these differences while also finding common ground. The army of the dead, however, do not fit into any of these cultural frameworks. They are an anomaly, a force outside the natural order, and their continued presence could have been seen as an affront to the traditions and values of the living. By releasing them, Aragorn shows his respect for the living cultures of Middle-earth and his commitment to building a future that honors these traditions. The decision also reflects Aragorn's understanding of the psychological and emotional needs of the soldiers who would be marching into the final battle. War is not just a physical struggle, but also a psychological one, where morale and the will to fight are just as important as numbers and strategy. The army of the dead, with their eerie and unsettling presence, could have had a negative impact on the morale of the living soldiers. Fear is a powerful weapon, but it is also a double-edged sword. While the dead might have terrified Sauron's forces, they could also have instilled fear and doubt in the hearts of the free peoples, weakening their resolve at the critical moment. By choosing to rely on the living, Aragorn is bolstering the morale of his troops, reinforcing their sense of agency and purpose, and ensuring that their victory, if it comes, is one they have earned through their own courage and determination. In a broader sense, Aragorn's decision not to take the army of the dead to Mordor is also about the kind of world he envisions after the war. The War of the Ring is not just about defeating Sauron, but about laying the foundations for a new era of peace and prosperity in Middle-earth. Aragorn's leadership is forward-looking, concerned not just with the immediate needs of the war, but with the long-term future of the world he hopes to help rebuild. By releasing the dead and choosing to rely on the living, Aragorn is making a clear statement about the kind of peace he seeks to establish, one that is built on the strength, unity, and shared values of the free peoples, rather than on the fear and power of the supernatural. This decision also has a deeply symbolic significance. The army of the dead represents the past, an era of broken oaths, curses, and unresolved grievances. By choosing not to bring them to Mordor, Aragorn is symbolically letting go of the past and embracing the future. He is acknowledging that while the past cannot be forgotten, the future must be built by the living, free from the shadows of old curses and ancient wrongs. This is a powerful statement about the importance of moving forward, of building a new world that is not bound by the mistakes and tragedies of the past, but is instead shaped by the hopes and aspirations of the living. In conclusion, Aragorn's decision not to take the army of the dead to Mordor is a deeply strategic, symbolic, and ethical choice that reflects his understanding of leadership, unity, and the importance of the living in shaping the future of Middle-earth. It is a decision that emphasizes the need for the free peoples to stand together, to fight their own battles, and to earn their victory through their own courage and sacrifice. It is a choice that honors the traditions and cultures of the living, respects the dignity of those who fight, and ultimately sets the stage for a future that is built on the strength and unity of the free peoples, rather than on the fear and power of the past. Aragorn's journey to the throne of Gondor is a central narrative thread in The Lord of the Rings, one that is marked by his gradual revelation as not just a capable leader, but as the true king, destined to unite the kingdoms of men and bring peace to Middle-earth. His path is not merely a physical or military journey, but one deeply rooted in the qualities that make a ruler just and wise. Aragorn's decision to release the army of the dead after the Battle of Pelennor Fields and not to bring them to Mordor is a pivotal moment in his claim to the throne, demonstrating his worthiness and the kind of king he is destined to be. Throughout the story, Aragorn's leadership is contrasted with that of other rulers and potential leaders. Denethor, the steward of Gondor, represents a failed leadership, one marked by despair, pride, and a desire for control at any cost. Denethor's tragic downfall is a result of his inability to see beyond his own fears and his desire to hold on to power even as it slips away. In contrast, Aragorn represents hope, renewal, and a leadership style that is inclusive and rooted in a deep sense of responsibility to those he leads. His decisions are not based on a desire for power or control, but on a commitment to the greater good and the well-being of all the free peoples of Middle-earth. Aragorn's refusal to take the army of the dead to Mordor is a significant demonstration of his understanding of what it means to be a true king. The power that comes with commanding the dead is immense, and in the hands of a lesser man, it could easily become a means to secure power through fear and domination. However, Aragorn's decision to release them is a conscious rejection of the idea that power alone makes a king. Instead, he understands that true kingship is about more than wielding power. It is about justice, honor, and the ability to inspire and lead through wisdom and compassion. This decision is also a reflection of Aragorn's understanding of the nature of leadership and the responsibilities that come with it. To take the army of the dead to Mordor would have been an easy path, one that could have guaranteed victory through overwhelming force. But Aragorn knows that the role of a king is not to take the easy path, but to make the hard choices that are in the best interest of his people and the future he seeks to build. By releasing the dead, Aragorn is choosing the path of integrity and honor, even though it might be more difficult and uncertain. He is choosing to rely on the living, the men and women of Middle-earth who have a stake in the future they are fighting for, rather than on a force bound by a curse and driven by the need to atone for past wrongs. In making this choice, Aragorn is also demonstrating his respect for the laws and traditions of Gondor and the other realms of men. The dead, while powerful, are not part of the natural order. They are bound by a curse that is outside the normal rules of life and death. By choosing not to use them as a weapon in the final battle, Aragorn is respecting the natural order and the traditions that have governed the realms of men for centuries. He is showing that he understands the importance of upholding the values and principles that have been passed down through generations, and that he is not willing to sacrifice these values for the sake of a quick victory. This decision also ties into Aragorn's deep respect for the concept of oaths and the binding nature of promises. The army of the dead had sworn an oath to fight for Isildur, and they had been cursed because they broke that oath. Aragorn, as Isildur's heir, gives them the opportunity to fulfill that oath and find peace. Once they have done so, their debt is paid, and Aragorn releases them. To compel them to continue fighting, to force them to march to Mordor, would have been to violate the very principles of honor and oaths that Aragorn holds dear. It would have been an abuse of his power as their commander and a betrayal of the values that define him as a leader. Moreover, Aragorn's decision reflects his understanding of the importance of legitimacy and the consent of the governed in his claim to the throne. A ruler who gains power through fear and coercion, even if that power is used for good, can never truly be a legitimate king. True kingship is based on the willing acceptance of the people, on their recognition of the king's right to rule, and on the trust they place in his wisdom and judgment. By refusing to use the army of the dead as a tool of conquest, Aragorn is ensuring that his claim to the throne is based not on fear, but on the respect and trust of his people. He is demonstrating that he is a ruler who can be trusted to use power wisely and justly, and that he values the lives and well-being of his subjects above his own desire for power. This decision also serves to further distinguish Aragorn from Sauron, the Dark Lord he is fighting against. Sauron's power is based on fear, domination, and the subjugation of others. He seeks to bend the wills of all who oppose him, using any means necessary to achieve his goals. Aragorn, on the other hand, seeks to lead through example, to inspire others to join him in the fight for a better future. By rejecting the use of the dead as a means to secure his victory, Aragorn is rejecting the very methods that define Sauron's rule. He is choosing a path of leadership that is rooted in the principles of freedom, justice, and the respect for life, rather than in the pursuit of power at any cost. Aragorn's decision is also a reflection of his personal journey and growth throughout the story. At the beginning of The Lord of the Rings, Aragorn is a ranger, a man who lives on the fringes of society, burdened by the legacy of his ancestors and the knowledge that he is the heir to a kingdom that has long been without a king. Throughout the story, Aragorn's journey is one of coming to terms with his heritage, accepting his role as the rightful king, and proving himself worthy of that role. His decision to release the army of the dead is a culmination of this journey, a moment where he fully embraces the responsibilities of kingship and demonstrates that he has the wisdom, courage, and integrity to lead. This decision also has a symbolic significance in the context of Aragorn's claim to the throne. The army of the dead represents the past, the legacy of Isildur, the broken oaths, and the ancient curses that have haunted Middle-earth for centuries. By releasing the dead, Aragorn is symbolically putting the past to rest and embracing the future. He is breaking free from the shadow of his ancestors and stepping into his own as a king in his own right. This act of releasing the dead is a powerful statement about Aragorn's commitment to building a new future for Middle-earth, one that is not bound by the mistakes and tragedies of the past, but is instead focused on hope, renewal, and the possibilities of the future. In conclusion, Aragorn's decision not to take the army of the dead to Mordor is a defining moment in his journey to the throne. It is a decision that demonstrates his deep understanding of the principles of leadership, his respect for the traditions and values of Gondor, and his commitment to building a future based on justice, honor, and the consent of the governed. It is a decision that sets Aragorn apart as a leader who is worthy of the throne, not because of his ability to wield power, but because of his wisdom, integrity, and respect for the lives and well-being of his people. This decision is a key moment in Aragorn's transformation from a ranger to a king. and it is one that solidifies his claim to the throne as a leader who can be trusted to guide Middle-earth into a new era of peace and prosperity.